Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of Older Man Living Life with Purity. And today we're going to talk a little bit about autism. I know it's a big subject going on in the world right now, especially with the government now and their Health and Human Services Director, Bobby Kennedy, is looking into the effects and the causal reasons for autism and why there's 7 times the number of diagnosed cases of autism in the United States alone since I believe it's like 2010 or 2015. You know, what is creating this huge uptick in autism? Is it overdiagnoses? Is it related to maybe there's something in our environment or something in our medicines or our food that's causing this, especially in our young boys? What is going on and why this dramatic number going up? Is it, the insurance companies or the schools trying to get more money for dealing with the little Jimmies of the world that are acting up in class or something like that, and they want to put them on Ritalin or one of these other drugs that sort of settles the kid down but wires them in a wholly different way? What's going on? And we're probably not going to get that answer anytime soon, because I can assure you, based on previous events of history, once there's money involved with a problem, it's really hard to take that money away, because some analyst or advisor or doctor or therapist wants to buy a boat or a new house or something like that. So they're not going to give up on their income stream very easily. They're going to fight it and say, no, you don't understand, blah, blah, blah. I'm the doctor. I'm the one with all the knowledge here. Well, that may be, but it doesn't mean you're right. So we have to look at these things and we have to dig down on this and figure out what's going on. So I did some research on autism, and I had actually one of the viewers contacted me about it. And this woman is a clinical psychologist. And she had written me several months ago, and she told me that she had been watching the podcast, and she was listening to the stories, and she was kind of watching my behaviors. She was watching and looking into the veracity of the stories and things of this nature. And she wrote to me and she says, Larry, she says, I think you're autistic. And I said, what do you mean autistic? Why would you say I'm autistic? She says, I think you just have a little bit of autism in your spectrum because it's what has designed you into being a highly functional, analytical person. She said, you probably would have made a really good trial lawyer based upon what she's seen. And I said, well, you should have seen me in the federal court. I don't know if I did that well, but I cut through a lot of the crap that was going on. And I basically tried to deliver information and the truth to the jury in as tight a package as I could and not belabor things that go on for a week of testimony talking about one little individual item as the other participants in the trial did with their attorneys and their arguments. They would go on for days about the stupidest of stuff and just bored the shit out of the jury. I was watching all this, and when it came to my time, I would go up and I'd ask 3 to 5 questions, and that was it. And basically laid it all out, flattened the other arguments for the previous 5 days, left the jury usually laughing or at least fully understanding that there was at least one person in that courtroom that still respected them and wasn't going to continually deliver lies to them to try to blame their problems on somebody else. So anyway, we'll talk about the trial in another segment coming up here when Alex gets back, because that kind of back and forth is a lot better with somebody else in here in the studio with me. And Alex, as many of you know, was one of my key witnesses that I brought into the trial to try to deliver some sort of understanding about what a devotion is, and not just for Catholics, but for people of the world, and how these things operate, and really that there's no money in it. So anyway, to the autism stuff, this woman declared that I was autistic, and she says, you have a bit on the spectrum. She says, it's good. You seem to deal with it quite well. But we talked a little bit, and in that discussion, she shared with me some pretty incredible stuff. And let me start off with telling you about what my experience has been with people with autism, mainly kids. And so at the property in Rome City, when I was there from 2000 to 2010 and trying to deal with all this bullshit that was going on with the Catholic Church and the Catholics and all this other stuff that was going on, I was kind of in the middle of all this crossfire. And I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there one bit. And I didn't ask for any of this, and I wasn't really, as they say, I did not have a dog in the fight. But I wasn't going to take the bullshit from these people without fighting back. And so that's how I got involved. But when I was there, I would have people continually showing up unannounced from all over the world. And they would invariably say, I don't know why I'm here, but God told me to come here, and Larry would know what to do. They didn't know I was Larry. They didn't know anything. I hadn't addressed anything. They came looking for Larry. And so I basically knew whenever they said that this was one of these, I called them God setups. You know, God had brought these people there. This was a total setup. It was either for me to learn, them to get some sort of healing, them to learn and develop their spiritual strength, because all these people were hurting. Either they had a life situation with their medical, either they were deathly ill, or they had a child who was ill and dying, or just all sorts of variables in between. These people would be showing up, and one day I was alone. How this happens, but weekends I would usually be at the property alone, and it was a Saturday, and this one gentleman showed up with a little boy, and the little boy was probably 4 to 5 years old, somewhere in there. But he was very distracted. He was not paying attention to me or anything else. And I could tell by his mannerisms and his behavior that there was something neurologically affecting him. And the father told me he was from Texas. He flew up from Dallas that day. And he had flown in from Dallas to Fort Wayne, brought his little boy with him because he'd been having these dreams telling him to go to Rome City and to take his son there. And so as a scout, he just hopped on a plane with his son, left his wife home with the other kids, and he came up to try to see what was going on in Rome City. Now, this guy was a medical doctor, and he had a son who was autistic. And the little boy was, just kind of looking around. He would not look at me. He didn't want to make eye contact, and I looked at him, and I looked at the father, and I talked to the boy just like he was engaging with me. I didn't deny him anything. I didn't talk around him. I talked directly to him, exactly as I would want somebody to talk to me. Well, anyway, the father came in, told me some more of the story. The little boy kind of sat there, just kind of, looking around and not making the eye contact, doing his typical things. And this little boy was aphasic, meaning that he wouldn't speak. And so this is very common with kids with autism, is they don't verbalize things, they don't do other things, but they develop other forms of communicating, whether it's saying no defiantly, or, putting up with a little bit of a conflict there with mom or dad when they tried to get them to do something, whether it's putting on their clothes, because they really don't like things touching their skin. They have different feelings about stuff, but they don't want stuff touching them or putting pressure on certain areas of their body. These kids are really sensitive to the physical side. And so this little boy was actually kind of acting up a little bit. And I just looked at him and I said, hey, guy, I said, you know, if you let your dad and I kind of get through what you guys came to do today and you're good, I said, I've got an ice cream machine. And boy, it'd be a lot of fun to sit down. Let's go get some ice cream. But you've got to be good. You got to help us out. You got to behave. You know how to behave. So if you can do that for us, I said, when we get done, we'll go get some ice cream. And he didn't, respond or anything. He just basically kept looking like he was checking out the stars in the sky, so to speak. He was all around, but anywhere, but not looking at me. So his father and I continued our discussion, and I told him about the history of the property and my relationship with it and things of this nature. And then I took him to the little chapel I had built. And this little chapel had been the site of a number of let's just call them minor miracles or major miracles. I mean, miracles. Any miracle is major if you're the one that's getting it. So I would consider some of them bigger than others, but to whoever's getting it, it's a big thing, and it's a major thing. And this little boy was so well behaved. So well behaved. He sat there in a pew in this little chapel while his father and I talked. And then I asked the father to pick the boy up and lifted him up so that he could, touch a few of the relics that had been left there and things like that. Some of them from Sister Millie that I had still on hand. And then I asked if I could pray. And the father said, well, he's not going to want you to touch him. And I said, I understand, but I'll pray over him. I said, and I asked the little boy, I said, would it be okay if I prayed for you and you could just be quiet for that little bit? Is that okay? Could you do that for me? And he didn't do anything. So I did, and I started to touch him, and he backed up and cried and started, putting on some sort of a show. And I said, I'm your friend. I love you. I would not hurt you. Do you trust me? And he didn't really react to anything differently, but he settled back into where he was. I placed my hands, one on his shoulder, one on his head, and then I prayed for him. And the father prayed along with me. And when it was all done, we sat back, and there was so much heat came off this little boy. I was like rubbing my hands because there was so much just heat that was generated from this process, which is kind of typical in a healing situation. And when we're standing there and getting ready to move on, the little boy looked up to his father and said, can we get ice cream now? The father was floored. The father was crying in hysterics. And I said, dude, what's the big deal? I said, the kid wants ice cream. He says, you don't understand. My son has never spoken in his entire life. And I said, well, he's talking now. And the father and I just kind of laughed. And the little boy really didn't, pull out of his shell, so to speak. But he was still in there. And that sign to me, when he asked about getting the ice cream, was really indicative of the true presence of the Holy Spirit in that moment. So I didn't need to be brought to belief. I already knew. But this father and this little boy, were having a moment, and this was one of those God setups. So, but the story continues. And as we're walking along down the hallway, and this building had long hallways. I mean, the building was probably 360 foot long altogether. So you can imagine these hallways, it's like walking down the length of a football field. And so we're walking down one of the hallways towards the kitchen area where the ice cream machine was. Now, the ice cream machine was like a turn to the right, another turn to the left, and then another like turn back to the right to get there. It wasn't in plain view. So the little boy had no idea where this ice cream was. But he was walking out in front of us, several feet ahead. And the little boy, as we're going down the hallway, turns right. He walks a little bit more, and then he turns left. And we're following along, and I'm just laughing. And the father says, "What's going on?" I said, "This kid knows where the ice cream machine is." And he goes, "What?" I said, "He knows." And the kid took us right to the ice cream machine. We had ice cream. And but it showed to me that there's something that's working inside these kids that maybe some of these doctors or psychiatrists aren't really dialing in on. That there's a holy presence inside these kids, or something is leading them. Something is always there. And I believe it's the Holy Spirit. And that's what I believed at that time. Now I know it's the Holy Spirit, and I'll get to it. Why? So as we're sitting there, this little boy is enjoying his ice cream. And then I was thinking to myself, I should have offered him some toppings. I had some chocolate sauce and some nuts and things like that. And then the little boy, I went and I brought the sauces out and things like that. And the little boy then just went right at him and started, helping himself. And that was really unusual because the little boy had never really dispensed his own food before. He'd always been watching his mother, his father, or one of his siblings would always be the one that would put the food out there, and then the kid would eat or have to be assisted in eating. Because these kids with the autism, there seems to be a sort of a disconnect with their body that is going on inside their head. And the little boy, when I went to try to pray over him and touch him, he was resistant to it. He didn't want to have anyone touching him. They don't like certain feelings of fabric on their skin. And part of the reason may be is normal adults, normal humans only use about 5% of their brain. Now, this has been mapped by studies going on, for a long, long time, that we've underused so much of our brain capacity, except when you get to these autistic kids. And then there seems to be more brain is being activated than what is happening in maybe in their parents or siblings who are considered to be normal. So when these children are doing their processing of information, they are not so connected to the body, I think, because their mind is working at such an advanced pace than maybe the rest of us might be working at. I don't know if they're working overtime to get to the same conclusion, or they're out there working on different things altogether that we're not aware of.